Good afternoon. I'm here to talk about my beautiful grandmother, Grankie. I wish I could have been at her funeral to say this, but as they say in my business, the show must go on. And you know, it's very appropriate that this tribute for Grankie would originate from her beloved South Florida. I think she'd be very pleased by that. So, let's get to it. How do you begin to eulogize someone as important in your life as someone like Grankie? How can I capture in a few words all that she meant to me? Well, I guess we'll start at the beginning. She was preparing for my arrival quite literally before I was born. I know this because my mother had wanted to name me Nathaniel David, but Grankie had other plans. No, she insisted. A firstborn son should be named after his father. And so, Larry Fields II came into the world. So long, Nathaniel. But that was Grankie's way. Once she had an idea, once she had decided that something was going to happen, well, you could take that to the bank. I didn't know it then, but a few hours into my life, I'd be held by that magical, wonderful creature named Grankie. And peering up into her eyes behind those outrageous 1980s glasses, my life would be forever changed for the better. You know, we're born as blank slates, looking to those around us for which ways to be. And it's safe to say that Grankie made a big mark on me in a big way. Her fingerprints could be found quite literally all over my life and how I view the world. There's a wonderful song from Stephen Sondheim's Into the Woods, whose lyrics perfectly capture this dynamic. Careful the things you say, children will listen. Careful the things you do, children will see and learn. Children may not obey, but children will listen. Children will look to you for which way to turn, to learn what to be. Careful before you say, listen to me. Children will listen. Careful the spell you cast, not just on children. Sometimes the spell may last past what you can see. Careful the tale you tell, that is the spell. Children will listen. And what a spell she cast over all her grandchildren, whether it was boo cows in the trees, Grandma Tildy, Jack and the Beanstalk, or any of the other weird and wonderful stories she'd tell. She was always transporting us into a world of wonder, always weaving her magic. You know, I learned so much from Grank in my life. I learned from her the way most kids learn, by watching, and she was a masterclass in love. She also held a PhD in mirth and levity. She was as funny and squirrely as she was sweet and kind, the perfect blend of sugar and spice. Oh, best believe Grankie had an edge, and I'd have it no other way. Nothing made her light up like being around her children and grandchildren. There was no joy like sitting with her as she held court over a card game at her kitchen table, wheeling and dealing with the jokes and the cards coming a mile a minute. Cut 'em thin, you're sure to win. Cut 'em thick, and you're a dick. Tracy. To watch her grinchy, mischievous smile emerge when she'd be dealt a full house, or to hear her delightful cackle when she was showing that she had the winning hand. Those were moments to live for. She always had what we jokingly called the welfare pot of chips that we set aside in every game. Why? Well, those chips were for whoever was losing. You see, while she wanted to win, that didn't mean she wanted for you to lose. And what if you exhausted the welfare pot? Well, she'd just shove you over a big chunk of her chips. And there she was, teaching big lessons on life through a poker game. Winning is great, but so is kindness and generosity and helping others. Careful the things you do, children will see and learn. When she was living in South Florida, there was nothing like her preparations for one of her kids arriving in from Ohio. It was as if she were reenacting the story of the prodigal son each and every time. She also experienced heartbreaking loss, losing 2 sons. First, Tiny at the age of 33, and more recently, her beloved baby bear, Donnie, at 63. Loss like that can break a person, and it nearly did. But she was a fighter till the end. When I was 8 years old, my mother and father got divorced, and I moved down to Florida to live with Grank and Rhea while my mom and dad sold our house, and my mom got ready to come down to join us. A whole new world was opened up to me. And who was there to show me the way? You guessed it, the Grankster. Suddenly, I went from the gray Midwest to the colorful coast of South Florida. My new friends were Haitian and Jamaican. My new pastime was catching lizards. And where did she take the family to church? Well, Pastor Barnes' church, of course, an all-Jamaican congregation, where that white lady felt right at home. And we're back to lessons in life. You see, when Grank was born in 1934, segregation was still the law. It would be 30 years before the Civil Rights Act of 1964. She would have encountered segregated buses and water fountains in Florida. I say all of that to say this. When she met her second husband, Riley Daniels, way back in the late 60s or early 70s, it wasn't common or accepted for a white person and a black person to date, let alone to get married. But did I mention that my grandmother did things her way? She loved who she loved, and that was that. Only, that wasn't that. Grank, along with her youngest child, my Aunt Rhea, then got a front row seat to see what prejudice and hatred really looked and felt like. She and our family were shown the door at the white churches in town, with one pastor even telling her, "You're lucky we let you come in here with that family of yours." So what did she do? Where did she go? Well, to Elder Dewberry's church on Dayton's west side, for starters, and we went with her. From my earliest memories, I can always recall being around people who looked different than me. What a wonderful gift she gave me and our entire family. When I look around at our family now, we're a veritable United Nations of diversity and inclusion. The faces around our holiday gatherings are black and white and brown. Guide them along the way, children will listen. Where'd we all learn to love so openly? Who taught us that most important life lesson? Grankie, that's who. She had a high bar for eccentricity too, as in not much fazed her or stood out to her as being strange that would to someone else. How many of you ever had a side man growing up? You see, in one of her Florida homes, you might have noticed a man living in her covered carport. He had a sofa, a radio, and even a microwave, but it was all in the carport outside. And someone once asked, "Who's that man out there?" Her reply, as if it were the most normal thing in the world, "Oh, that's side man. He's a war veteran with shell shock. He can't live indoors." Seemed perfectly normal to her, so it seemed perfectly normal to me. The stories of how our Grankie marched the beat of a different drummer could fill up hours, days worth of stories. I can't tell them all, but here's a few. There was that time when she and my mother got so stoned, you see, there was a time before she was the church-going person we know today, that she insisted on going to the emergency room, where she looked the doctor right in the eye and said, dead serious, without even a hint of joking, "Doctor, our eyes are turning to stone." That must have been some ER visit. Or the infamous What tape, which was a series of recordings she made of her calling all of her kids and her then ex-husband Don and aggravating the living daylights out of all of them. The mischief in her voice is priceless. And she can barely contain her laughter as she makes ever more outrageous requests to her kids to drop everything they're doing to bring her a bottle of pop. Or as she said on the tape, "I ain't got to no pop." It's a truly hilarious recording, perfectly capturing the essence of her playful spirit and her joyful nature. God, she was fun. And then there was the convertible era. You see, most people think that there are two ways to drive with a convertible, with the top either up or down. No, not Grankie. She found a third way, straight up. As she used to say, "Sure, why not?" Or that time she dyed my mother and Penny's bangs, just the bangs, don't ask why, screaming blonde, a full 30 years before that sort of thing might be considered cool. Or how about the time she put speed in her then husband Riley's chili, again, long before her church days. And she loved to tell the story of how after dinner he stayed up all night fixing things around the house and cleaning. According to her retelling, he said, "Mary, I don't know why, but I just have so much energy." She loved telling stories like that. She was a great storyteller. Or how about when I was 22 years old and Pope John Paul II had just died? The ridiculousness of the wall-to-wall TV coverage must have inspired me, because before I knew it, I had junked together a full Pope costume out of stuff around the house, complete with paper pontiff hat. I wasted no time in showing off my creation to Grankie, knowing that she was a once-upon-a-time Catholic back in the day. And did she find all of this behavior strange coming from her 22-year-old grandson? Did she say, "Grow up, stop that foolishness"? No. Instead, she taught me some Latin from the old Catholic Mass, and thus the Pope game was born. She nurtured my creativity, encouraged me to be me. Children will look to you for which way to turn, to learn what to be. Or there was that time when one of the elderly gentlemen she used to care for in her home, you see, she ran a home health company back then, he expressed the desire to be baptized. Well, before he knew it, he was in the pool of her apartment complex, Grankie presiding, and she baptized him right then and there. We were the witnesses, naturally. Keeping with pools for a moment, there were the games we used to play in the pool. Her favorite one was the Down Flight 727 game, where she'd be the lone survivor of the plane crash in the ocean, and us kids would have to get her on the raft and take her back to the shore. And speaking of games, who could forget the powder game? And she was a renowned drama queen, too. And when the moment called for it, namely, anytime she wasn't getting her way for one reason or another, she'd transform into Ethel Merman, Betty Davis, Joan Crawford, and Lana Turner, all rolled up into one. Her theatrics were the stuff of legend. No wonder I ended up with a career in the theater. And then, of course, there were all the times she would mortify us with her restaurant antics, including ordering salads with no lettuce. Now, see, she'd always check to see how the server responded. This was her test to see how the rest of this evening was going to go. Her orders of her steak, medium rare to the rare side, and her big, bold dinner time prayers, complete with raised hands, which always included the line, "God bless this food. Bless the hands of those who bought it, prepared it, and eat it." And with that simple little line, her soul was showing, a glimpse at who she really was at her core. You see, she didn't want for the food to be blessed just for her. She was also thinking about the line cook in the back, about the farmer who picked it. She was thinking globally. Another life lesson observed, filed away. Her birthday scriptures were legendary. In every card for every birthday, she'd include a large listing of handwritten scriptures. And you could easily suss out where you stood with her on any given birthday, judging by the tone of the scriptures she included. If you had a lot of verses from Revelations, well, watch out. And keeping with the church theme for a moment, another thing that was legendary were her testimonies. The ending was always the same. She'd quote from a favorite hymn, "When I think about the goodness of Jesus and all he's done for me." And right around then was when the tears would start to flow, and she'd hit her big crescendo. "My soul cries out, hallelujah! Thank God for saving me." And you know, she was thankful. She lived the life of a thankful person. And I'm thankful. Thankful that I got to know her. That I got 40 years of my life with her in it. You know, on paper, she and I shouldn't have gotten along so well. We were quite different in a number of ways. In this age of division where people are so bitterly divided along lines of politics and religion and culture, we might seem like an odd pairing. Her, a devoutly Christian woman, and let's just say me, a decidedly secular individual. There was so much we didn't agree on. But you know what? We both realized that we had a lot more in common than those things that separated us. We had the bonds of love, laughter, and family. And you know something? She never ceased to amaze me. When I introduced her to my partner in life, Rommel, she liked him right away. Go figure. They hit it off. She taught him how to play cards. Started including him in her Christmas cards to me. Oof, what sort of birthday scriptures was he going to get? That she would so graciously accept this newly immigrated partner of mine, complete with Spanish accent, just goes to show. You never know sometimes. Another Grankie curveball. Just when you think you got her figured out, she's still got a surprise or two up her sleeve. When Rommel met Grankie, she was already 80 years old. And just like me, he was an instant fan. Moments after meeting her for the first time, we got back in the car to go home, and he looked over at me and said, "Grankie is my favorite member of your family. She's wonderful." And look at that. Still working her magic. Still casting her spell all those years later. I have to wrap things up, so I'll end by saying this. I loved her fully and completely. I loved her from the moment I first met her. I loved her to the moment she died. And I still love her now. Last year at Christmas, I got a phone call around midnight. Grankie had fallen out of bed. I said that I'd go to help her. I got there around 12:30, and I helped her back into bed, and I asked her if she needed anything, if she was hungry, and I heated up some of her leftover Christmas dinner. We visited for a while, and at one point she asked me, "Where did you learn to be so kind?" I looked back at her and I said, "I learned that from you." Her eyes lit up, and we shared a few more memories before I went back to my hotel with a heart full of gratitude. How lucky was I to get to show through actions just how much I'd learned from her. Back in 2011, I sent her a tribute letter because, well, it's all nice and good to say beautiful things about a person at their funeral, but she's not here to hear it right now. But she was there for that letter, and she loved it. She told me she wanted it to be read aloud at her funeral, so here it is. Dear Grankie, I'm writing to wish you a very happy birthday, but also because I feel sometimes it's important to take a moment and let the people who are the most important in our lives know just how much they're loved. As I grow older, I find myself reflecting back more and more on how much you've influenced me in my life, how much your example of kindness and caring has impacted the way I make decisions today. When I think about sharing, sacrifice, and giving, I always think of you. All the time I have little flashes of memory about the way you used to do things in Florida. I remember back to when one of your kids would come to visit town. No matter how bad your financial situation might have been, you always found a way to make sure there was a welcome cake and food for a celebration. I think about how you would always put others' interests first ahead of your own. I think about how when my mother was so sick and we thought she was dying, how you would come over and help to take care of her. You weren't in great health yourself, but you took care of her with the kind of compassion and care that only you could give. You brought peace and comfort and reassurance to a very dark time in all of our lives. I'll never forget that. The way you cared for her and me during that time has left a profound and lasting impact on me. Anytime I make the decision to do something selfless, something that puts others first, I'm taking a page from you. Something else I learned from you that I'm really grateful for is the ability to be different and unique and unapologetic about it. Whether it's a salad with no lettuce, stink leg dance, fee-fi, faux-fum in church, a convertible top straight up, raising your hands to pray in any restaurant, or anything else you do that makes you so unique, they're all a part of what makes you so special to me. I love that you've never been afraid of being eccentric, never been afraid of just being you, no matter what anyone else had to say about it. That's something you and I share in common in a big way. It's only now as I enter the real grown-up phase of my life that I truly see just how much of an influence you've been on me and how grateful I am for that. You've made my life so much richer and so much more interesting. I can't tell you how much I love and appreciate you. Every day, me and Timmy find ourselves using your old sayings like, "Arrive alive, haste makes waste, Avrin Kindavrin," and so many others. Those are all little reminders that even though we live so far apart, you're still always in our thoughts, always on our minds. I miss playing cards and games with you. I miss watching The Wheel with you. I look back on the time we lived so close as a great time in my life. I wish you the kind of happiness and joy you've brought to me on your birthday. I wish you the joy of knowing how much I love you and how much I've learned from your example. I think it's safe to say no one else has a grandmother quite like you. No one else has a Grank. This whole family is lucky to have you, and we all love you very much. I hope to see you again very soon, beat you in a game or two, maybe watch Tom O'Reilly and Nancy Glass. Ha! Happy birthday. And I've got a treasure trove of letters from her to me, some dating back to 1993, 30 years ago. Each one in that distinctive handwriting. each one crafted with care. I even have some of the envelopes with that famous "First Class Mail, do not bend, do not forward" written all over them. I'd go to visit my dad in Ohio as a kid, and I'd only be gone for 2 weeks, but the letters said, "I miss you." Truth is, I missed her too, and I miss her now. The last time I saw her, the day before she died, I held her hand a lot. I did that for the preceding 3 days too, but on this day, for the last time, knowing that I wouldn't see her again, I gently stroked her hair, and I whispered in her ear how much I loved her. I gave her more than a couple kisses on the cheek, and I told her she was one of the most wonderful, beautiful people I'd ever known. I didn't say goodbye. How could I? How could you ever say goodbye to someone like her? She was more than a mom and a grandma. To my mother, she was a best friend. And to London, she was a second mother. And to all of us, she was Grankie. On the drive back down to Miami, I saw her in the mist of every mountaintop and in the rays of the sunset. I heard her in the lyrics of every song that played, and I even saw her mischievous grin in the crescent moon at night. She lived a wonderful life. She was 88. But you know what? She could have lived to be 100, and it wouldn't have been long enough. You know, I talk a lot about the lessons in life she taught me, that she taught all of us, all through her actions. And I wonder, how will each of you keep her legacy alive in your lives? I've got a few pro tips. Love freely. Love fully. Practice a kind of radical acceptance of others who are different than you. Don't be afraid of being weird. Don't worry about what other people think of you. Practice kindness always. Give generously. Hold court at your kitchen table with card games and delight in the company of your family and friends. Let yourselves go. Defend someone who's being talked down. Laugh often. Be selfless. Find your joy. Embrace your mischievous side. Tell long, wonderful stories. Arrive alive. Surprise yourself and others sometimes. Remember, haste makes waste. And above all else, love each other like she loved each of you. Do these things in remembrance of her. She lives in each one of us now. She's gone, but not forgotten, never. And I'll never not love her.
I may not climb Mount Everest when praise in others' eyes. I may not win the lottery, win the Pulitzer Prize. I may not sail the ocean in a glorified canoe, but I will never, never not love you. I might not be in fashion, might not be all that smart, might not be that good looking, not someone set apart, might not stand in the spotlight that shines upon the pew, but I will never, never not love you. I will never not light up when I see you. I will never not feel you through and through. There are many things I may and may not do, but I will never, never not you.